I'm very happy to present my work as part of the business development team here at Commodore. And as Matt said previously, one of the main things that my comrade and I, Hojin, worked on is actually the conceptualization of the development of Commodore, the Global English Camp abroad, outside Japan, and more specifically in South Korea. So I know that other venues or other countries have already been considered in the past, notably Vietnam and also to some extent Australia, even if it's more minor, but mainly Vietnam. But we mainly wanted to work on South Korea for a bunch of different reasons, and it was also facilitated by the fact that Hojin is Korean. So I listed here 4 reasons why an expansion of the Global English Camp in Korea would be relevant and would be something that could be done in the near future. So the first one is the geographic proximity of Korea with Japan. So it's something that, in my opinion, from a logistical standpoint, would make the expansion easier. The second one is the similar level of development of Korea and Japan. So from an economic standpoint, it makes more sense to actually go to a country with a similar level of development in order to set up the same business model. So that's why it was something that we preferred over Vietnam, which is still a country considered a developing country, whereas Korea is considered a fully developed country. In addition to that, there's a very, very strong interest of both students and parents for education in general and for learning English in particular. So I don't know if you've ever seen documentaries about a day in the life of the Korean students. It is pretty intense because people really give a very, very strong importance to education and achievement and also to being able to master and to speak several languages, including English. And the last one is the cultural attractiveness of Korea to foreigners. So Mocha mentioned previously K-pop, which is very relevant here because the rise of K-pop and also K-dramas, which are Korean TV series is something that really increased and strengthened the country's soft power and really made it more attractive to foreigners in general. And it's something that is very relevant to building a global English camp there because it would be attractive to global interns, international interns. So in addition to that, one of the main things that I worked on regarding Commodore in general was the definition of a value proposition for the business. So basically the common defining elements across different services. So basically I tried to do that in order to get a better understanding of Commodore in general and to be able to better frame the expansion of Commodore to Korea afterwards. So I kind of defined 3 main core elements that kind of unify the entire business and unify the entire offering of Commodore. So these are the following. So basically, the idea of leaving one's comfort zone to explore new territories and experience something challenging. And it is encapsulated in the expression common out. So it is something that we see not only in the Global English Camp, but also in other aspects of the business or other services, whether in-person services or online services that are proposed by the company. The second one is the idea of bridging social and cultural differences through meaningful experiences. And it's something that is clearly visible in the case of the Global English Camp because it is based on cross-cultural learning. So the idea that people with different cultural backgrounds would come together in one place and learn from each other. So not only would students learn from interns, but also vice versa. Interns would also learn from students. And the last one is using language as a tool for self-expression, experience sharing, and empowerment. And it is also something that is present, in my opinion, across most, if not all, the services that are proposed by Common Out. So just to walk you through the document, because it is a pretty lengthy document, I'm not going to go through all the details, but it is divided into two parts. The first one is about is a kind of breakdown of Common Out Japan to kind of understand how the business works, what are the core components, the defining components of Common Out Japan, or what are the relevant components, what are the ones that we would like to change. And based on that, I try to replicate that model and replicate that structure, but for Korea. And I try to see to what extent the model would have to evolve or change in order to accommodate differences, cultural differences or business differences in Korea. So some of the general information regarding Commodore Japan is that obviously it is located in Japan, multiple venues there. It happens during the summer. In 2019, you had 178 interns and you had exactly 57 venues in Japan. So in addition to that, I broke down the different activities and perks that are provided to interns, because one of the main concerns that we had within the business development team was regarding cost and profitability, and whether or not we would have to decrease costs in order to make Commodore Korea profitable, and whether or not we have to sacrifice any of those perks that are given to the different interns. And you will see later on what my opinion is on the topic. So obviously, we know that plane tickets, housing, transportation in Japan is provided. You also have food and different kind of cultural activities that are provided, as well as health insurance. So this is a pretty comprehensive package that really provides an incentive for interns from all over the world to take part in this adventure. So yeah, and yes, so in addition to that, I just try to measure different costs to the different areas of spending. But one thing that I explained during my internship is that the overall cost of living in Korea is slightly less expensive than in Japan. So some of those costs are actually likely to be lower in Korea. So after that, I tried to do some research regarding South Korea itself, given that I've never been to South Korea, so I really needed to get a better understanding of the educational sector in South Korea and also the importance of education in South Korea. So what I did is that I first evaluated some what we call macro environmental factors, so factors related to the country in general, Korean society in general, and then I considered micro environmental factors, so more related to the educational sector from a business perspective in Korea. So to be brief, some of the main takeaways regarding Korea as a country in general is that Korea is considered now a developed country with a well-established middle class, but it has a slowing economy, and also it has a slightly Asian population. From a technological standpoint, it is also a very well-developed country with one of the fastest internet networks in the world, and also with local search engine platforms such as Naver and Daum. Sorry for the pronunciation. I'm not sure if it's the right way to pronounce it. And it has a very popular messaging app that is called Kakao Talk, and it is one of the main social networks that is used by Korean students in order to interact. Yes, so I said that already that it is a rapidly aging society. It has a rising number of international schools, so that's something that is pretty interesting because it shows that there is a demand and an interest for international education. And from a linguistic standpoint, the mastery of English is also perceived as an advantage on the job market and also a form of distinction socially. And one of the key takeaways that is important to take home regarding Korea in general as a society is regarding the socio-psychological environment of Korea. So some of the main points are notably that education is seen as a priority for most Korean families, and Koreans in general are willing to spend a substantial portion of their income on education. And one thing that is very important to highlight is that Korean parents are increasingly savvy about how they acquire information on educational opportunities for their children. And it's something that is facilitated by the rise of the internet and the fact that it is that information related to education is more and more freely available in general. Regarding the microenvironment, I'm just going to walk you through that very quickly. So Korea hires the most foreign English teachers per capita in the world. So it really, I think that if there's one thing that you should get from this presentation, it is probably that. It is really something that highlights how important learning English is for Korean parents and Korean students. There is an already very well-developed landscape regarding teaching programs, especially in the public domain, public area. So you can see different programs that already exist. We have EPIC, we have Talk, we have JPIC, which are different public programs that have been created in order to teach English. And then you have main players in the private ESL sector. I don't know if it's ESL or EFL. Maybe Alexa will be able to provide information related to that. But you can also see that here you have also many different companies that work in that environment. Some of them are more or less specialized regarding what kind of age they want to teach. So they are not necessarily direct competitors of Commodore because some of them teach adults, some of them teach children in kindergarten, but overall it's pretty well developed. And based on all the information that I gathered, I tried to raise questions regarding how Commodore Korea could be set up. So notably, in terms of like the main components that I've talked about previously, so the locations, the number of interns, how many venues, what period of time, and also whether all the perks could be made available to interns or not. So, we didn't really come to a definitive conclusion regarding how the program would be set up, but I think that the questions are already a good starting point because one of my ideas would be that in order to decrease costs, we could start by hosting the program in only one location, which would be the capital city of Korea, Seoul, and then we could gradually expand it maybe over time, but that would make us really save money, especially regarding transportation in the country. So that could be an idea. And also we've discussed whether or not the development of the program abroad would be gradual or whether we would have the same scale as Japan today from the beginning. But I think that we try to agree, we mostly agreed that it should be gradual in order for the program to develop, in order for the entire venture to be less risky. So yes, so a key point here is that in my opinion, so in order to give my opinion right away, I do not think that removing or some of the perks that we give our international students would be a good idea, because I think that the value proposition should remain the same to promote consistency among all the English camps and eventually create a strong brand identity. And that would be something, in my opinion, trying to decrease cost by simply removing some of the perks that are already available in Japan would kind of be detrimental to the reputation of the program, because it would be perceived as less than the Japanese program would be perceived as a cheaper version or low-cost version. And in my opinion, for the development of the company in the long run, and if we want Commodore Korea to be successful and to be well perceived by all the stakeholders that are involved in the development of the venture, it should have kind of the same perks, but with an increased emphasis on profitability. So that's something that I try to consider here. So I pretty much kept the same perks, but with added comments, notably regarding transportation. So that's a comment that I've already made before. So now I would like to show, yes, one of the last things that I worked on before the end of the internship. So it is the very last thing I think I worked on. And it is pretty much some kind of budget model for Commodore Korea that I came up with after a discussion that I had with Brian related to how he wanted to set up a financial model to understand where the main areas of spending and the main areas of revenue lie, and also how the venture could be made profitable. So based on what he told me to do and what we discussed during our meeting, I came up with four key parameters that are adjustable, but that should be taken into account when the venture will be set up. So the number of students per week, the intern to student ratio, so basically how many students will be facing one intern in a given class, the program duration in a week, but I think he wants it to be 5 weeks, so it's set on 5. And also the weekly fee per student, I arbitrarily set it on $500. And from that, we can derive some secondary parameters that are also key parameters to set the venture. So notably the total number of students that will be part of the program, the total number of interns, the total number of students per intern, so how many students will be taught by one intern, and also the capacity needed in the school. So basically, the parameters in red are adjustable parameters. So you come up with a gross profit after basically setting up the parameters, but the parameters are adjustable. So for instance, if you diminish the number of students per week, the profit will fall. If you diminish the weekly fee per student, the profit will fall also. If you increase it, the profit will rise. If you set the number of students per intern to a bigger number, for instance, it will actually boost the profitability, etc., etc. So from that, you can actually play around with different numbers and with the parameters to kind of see what profitability in theory would have with given parameters. And also the different areas of spending that I talked to you previously, so the different perks and also the different things that we spend on, whether it is plane ticket, housing, insurance, etc., are color-coded in order for us to clearly visualize which areas of spending are the main ones. So here we can clearly see that plane tickets are the main area of spending with the given parameters that are set, as well as housing, but that cultural activities and food and, for instance, orientation are not that expensive. So why cut them, or why not consider them as part of the program? Instead, we should try to come up with more innovative ways of diminishing costs notably, as I said, for transportation. So we could lower down transportation costs by hosting in one location, for instance, Seoul, and by considering using a bus if it is possible and if there is only one housing venue. Also, another consideration would be to consider boarding schools to save on food as well as housing and transportation if it is possible. But it is just an idea. Maybe it is more or less feasible depending on what kind of partnerships we can build. And finally, negotiate partnerships with local businesses in order to get production if we buy things in bulk, notably plane tickets, for instance. But it could be applied to other areas of spending. So yes, I hope I was not too long. So overall, that is pretty much my work and my presentation. I would be happy to receive your question.
Fantastic job. This is such a cool file. I've never seen this before. It's super comprehensive and I love the background. Fantastic presentation. I definitely learned a lot. I haven't really known what the business team has been up to. So this was like really great to see. And yeah, does anyone have any questions for Miguel?
I do. So I'm working on like a general outline for the curriculum for Commodore Korea. I was just wondering, do you know, as far as like the cram schools, are cram schools that are geared specifically towards a subject, like say English for STEM majors, English for business, more marketable, or like English in general? Because I know the ultimate goal for learning English in the Korean education system is to get into like the top 3 universities, Sky, Seoul, Korea, and Yonsei.
Yes.
So do you know which one, like as far as business and marketing, like which one is actually getting more students?
That's a good question. So actually, regarding the way that we divided our work between Hojin and I, Hojin is actually the one who did all that part of researching from schools and also categorizing them. I think there's actually a document you might be interested in because it really provides detailed information regarding different crime schools that he's found. So I would really advise you to either get in touch with him or to ask him for the document. But I know for sure that he actually found crime schools that are specialized in specific areas. I don't know whether or not he's found crime school related to STEM or not, but maybe he will be able to provide you with that information.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Mocha. Yeah, we had it divided up, and Miguel said it perfectly. Yeah, Hojin was the research guy, and he, like the boarding schools question that Miguel brought up, and then Hojin used that to research. And yeah, sure enough, some Hagwons have dorms that potentially could be used. And so, and again, like Gwen said, it's such a cool document. Man, this is great. We've never had anything like this. And just to give you all an idea, Miguel, what you did is amazing, so thorough. And this is the first time we've ever done anything like this. Just in case you guys didn't know, our partnership, obviously this is a big discussion in our business development team. Our partnership with Toshin is totally different because they're more taking the lead, right? It's their school. And in this approach with Miguel's document, proposals, value propositions, this document, it's more us taking the lead. And it's really exciting because this would be the first time we've ever done anything like this. And so Miguel, thank you, because your contributions we've never done before. This is something completely new and really special. So thanks for, I mean, you did so much, so it's hard to summarize it all in the amount of time, but yeah. And Mocha, I'll connect you with Hojin, of course.
Yeah, really fantastic job. And I have so many questions, but I will probably send them to you after because I know you have to head somewhere.
Yes,
but
no problem.
Before that, any last questions for Miguel from anyone? All right, well, great job again. I'll let you head over to your other call, but
yes, I'm just gonna stop screen sharing. Wait, how do I stop? Sorry about that. Okay, yes, I just see the button. Okay.
There we go.
Yes, but thank you very much. It was a pleasure to work with Commodore.